Welcome back to Make It Mondays, and this time around I'm going to be working on another blanket, and this time out of this yarn. So this is a stripe yarn, and it's going to be interesting to see how this yarn responds to the 3 different patterns that are going to be in the blanket. So it's going to be similar to the baby blankets that have been made before, but I'm going to show a couple more of the steps this time than the last time. Let me get everything turned around and I'll show you how it gets started. So the first kind of square that this blanket starts with is a log cabin. And to do that, it's working from the center square out to the edges. And it's just worked around and around, just like if you were sewing a log cabin. So I'm casting on 8 stitches. Now I'm doing 8 stitches because I'm making this blanket a total of 40 inches wide by 50 inches long, and doing it 4 blocks by 5 blocks. And so one of those blocks is the log cabin, and I know that from my gauge that means that each segment needs to be 8 stitches. So I cast it on. I'm going to knit across, flip the work, slip that very first stitch, and knit across. And it's like this all the way up until there are 8 ridges on the side that is facing the camera now. So this side is the right side. So it'll be 8 ridges, and then I'll bind off and pick up and so on. I don't know exactly when in this process I will be back, but I'll be back in just a bit. So I've gotten a full round around the center. So the cast on was here. I've gone around once, and I've done one more block. So I'm going to bind off. I still slip that first stitch. I just find that it makes a cleaner edge. So knitting and then slipping the stitch on the right hand needle over the left hand needle all the way across. Now this blanket is actually going to, the pattern is going to be on Patreon for anyone who wants to follow me there. It is at the only tier that I have now, which is a $5 tier. It also means that you will have the opportunity to get some of the videos early. But for any of the blanket patterns or blankets that I make, there will be the pattern written up over there with what I used to make the blanket and the gauge that I got to. And so not tested by others, just what worked for me. So working all the way across. And then last stitch. I'm not cutting the yarn, rotating it so that when it's done, the bottom edge is now my top. I'm going to pick up, not in the very first stitch, but the one after that. And it's picking up 1 stitch per slip stitch, just due to the normal gauge of garter versus garter rows versus stitches. Then I pick up in this slot so that I don't have a divot there, and then all the way across the bind off edge of block, I believe this is block 3. And I will go back through and double check all my counts, but I've done enough of these that I don't typically have to count anymore. and then picking up along the side of block 4, so the right hand side of block 4. And then continuing the slip 1 knit across for 8 rows. So I'll be back when it's time to connect the next style of block. This one will go to a 5 by 5 as far as number of blocks. So I'm at 4 by 3 right now. So I've got a little bit more to go, and it will finish off with 1 on the top of the blanket. So I'll be back when the piece that's going to be here binds off. So be back in a bit. So here we are at the next style of square. So I'm going to be picking up right in the bind off edge of the very first square. I'm going to be picking up 40 right along this edge, so just like I was doing in that first square for all the different little blocks. But once I get all the way to this corner, which will be 40 stitches, I'm just going to be knitting back and forth just like I have right here. So this is the relatively straightforward square that doesn't need that much explanation. So I will be back to show how the third style is done, and that's the one down here. So I will be back a bit later to show you how that last one is done. So I did forget to come back and show the cast on for several of the mitered squares, but luckily I still have 3 more to go. So I'm on the end of one mitered square and I'm casting onto the next mitered square. I'm using this one to hold the stitch markers while before they get put in place. So I am skipping the first stitch and I'm doing pick up and knit. So going into the edge stitch and literally picking up a loop of yarn just like you would if you were crocheting, all the way down. And as I get closer to the corner, to this corner, I will start counting out stitches. I am going to be placing the stitch markers in such a way that I can keep track of how many stitches are on each side of center, because for this square, the important thing is to know where your center stitch is. So I'm going to keep going all the way down, making sure that I know where stitch 41 is, which should be right around there. And then I will be going all the way out to 81 at the tip, and I will be back to show how the actual miters work. So I've gotten to the center 3 stitches, so that's the center stitch, and then those are the ones on either side. I'm going to slip the stitch to the right, go through the back of the loop for the ones to the left, and knit through those 2, putting the leftmost stitch on the top and sliding the right stitch on top of that. That's how I do a double decrease or a central double decrease, but there are so many variations on that depending on how the pattern works. Some of them want the center stitch on top, some of them it doesn't matter. In this case it doesn't matter, but I found that easier than many of the other options. But I'm going to keep going all the way down until I only have 3 stitches left, and then I will go from there. And I will be back, final 3 stitches, I will finish it off, and I'll show you what the final blanket looks like. And here is the final blanket. And if you made it this far in the video, please consider liking and subscribing. And if you want to see the next, or be notified when the next video comes out, please hit the notification bell. But this is the very first square, and it started out from there. And it just kept going. This is the third blanket with pretty much this pattern. The others were baby blankets. But this one was nice, pretty neon rainbows for the start of Pride Month. So I will see you next time on Make It Mondays. Bye.